who is paying for your product or who funds your product doesn't necessarily have to be the end user. And I'm finding that the nurturing and warming up piece is taking longer now. That's really what branding is. It's being consistent over time. This is the real of building a conscious business. The hard-earned lessons, unfiltered truths, and impactful guests. Welcome to Confessions of a Conscious CEO. Be a fly on the wall as I guide my client Dan, the founder of Kalda, through a live go-to-market strategy session. Kalda is a LGBTQIA+ self-therapy app providing expert mental health support for everyone's journey. And in this session, I help Dan figure out his monetization strategy, build a sales funnel that actually gets him monthly recurring revenue, and map out his marketing plan, from driving traffic to nurturing lead and converting customers. Quick heads up, this isn't going to be the full session, which was actually about 2 hours long, as I need to cut out some confidential information, but you'll still hear a ton of actionable insights that you can apply to your own business. Trust me when I say this is not an episode you want to miss, and you're free to take notes as you go, but if you want a deeper dive and you actually just want to enjoy this episode, then I highly recommend you check out my free GTM Essentials course. You will get 12 bite-sized lessons with a Notion workbook to help you apply everything step by step. In GTM Essentials, you will learn how to identify and solve the right customer problems, create products and offers people are actually excited to buy, build a brand that commands premium prices, create a sales funnel that works in the background, and build a content machine that consistently brings in new leads. This is such a good course, and I've made it free for you. As you're going through this episode, if you're like, oh my gosh, you're talking too fast, I can't take notes, take the free GTM Essentials course, because what I'm doing is applying a lot of the principles that I teach in this course to Dan's strategy session. And of course, we're customizing it and taking it further for his business. But I highly recommend you check it out. You can enroll now for free at selinaho.com/GTM-essentials, or you can click the link down below. And now, without any further ado, let's dive into the client strategy session with Dan. I really want to go through your sales and marketing strategy today because there's a lot of opportunity to monetize, and our goal is to have some stable revenue every single month. And the way to get there is to build a really solid strategy around that. I just wanted to reiterate the customer who is paying for your product or who funds your product doesn't necessarily have to be the end user. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, of course, if you can monetize off of your end user, that's great. But I just wanted you to know that's not the only way. So I talked about businesses where the end user is the actual person paying for it. If you buy clothes or toothpaste or whatever, you're buying it for yourself, that's great. But then there's also someone that's the customer, but not the end user. So think like you're buying gifts. So like you're buying flowers for your girlfriend, you're buying chocolates for your girlfriend. You're not the one enjoying it necessarily, but you're buying it for her. And then another one we talked about is sponsorships or ads. So that's another way. So Meta is able to keep all their stuff free, but then there's ads all the time because the advertisers fund the platform. So that's an example. And then the last one is like selling data, which I don't usually love because there's a lot of intricacies that come with that. So I don't know if it's best for you and your community. Yeah, probably not.
I think privacy, and it comes down to safety as well.
Yeah.
Also being, I think, a healthcare product where it's very personal and sensitive information. Yeah. I think prioritizing safety and privacy almost immediately eliminates us from like the advertising. It should be a fundamental right for it to be free.
Yeah.
But we can't operate the business. We can't build new therapy without charging. We need to somehow communicate that.
And you're creating something that's so needed. And I know accessibility is so important to you. And I completely respect that. And I completely understand. But at the same time, this needs to be sustainable for you as well and for the business. So we need to find a way to monetize and to fund it. I mentioned this on Friday already, but I absolutely do think we can charge something from your end user. I feel like if people see the benefit, they see the value, there's an amount of money they'd be willing to pay. So there's definitely that opportunity still there. I also think there's an opportunity to play from like the customer angle as well, where if there's gifting or something like, you know, a friend that's not doing well or a loved one you have that you feel like you want to give this to them, I think that's an opportunity too. And then sponsorships, which we talked about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love this. I really do love this angle around the gifting side as well. I think us as a community recognize that we often don't have access to jobs, or like we find ourselves in longer periods of unemployment. I guess one of the models that has spun out of that is pay for whatever you feel is like representative of your income. So we have a low income payment options, which is something that we should do.
Yeah.
But also I've noticed that people are willing to subscribe so that it could be given free to other people. So almost like a pay for a pal would be really interesting.
Or even as you're talking about this, for a lot of sponsorships, maybe it could be like, hey, you're sponsoring this course, but also there's maybe another tier where you sponsor 100 memberships or something. So all this to say, I think there's a lot of different opportunities and potential to monetize. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think the thing we need to concern ourselves with is the sales and marketing pieces, because once you have facts and figures to show, then it's a business case to get sponsors. Getting sponsors is going to be very similar to you raising, but it's going to be easier because like you have raising experience and you have tough skin now. We do need to give you negotiating power essentially. So how we build that is by showing the sales and the marketing strategy and making sure we build a community. So one thing though, I just wanted to say off the back of this, I'm noticing people are willing to pay for implementation and support. From a knowledge perspective, it seems like people's willingness to pay is decreasing a bit, just because there's like a lot of YouTube videos out there now. There's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of books. You can find the knowledge. I still think there's an opportunity for catered, customized, packaged knowledge if it's also supplemented with implementation support or just like community support or something like that. So that's just something I wanted to put out there and have you keep in the back of your mind, because that's just something I'm noticing across a lot of different industries and also with my business and a lot of my other clients as well. So throughout this entire thing, let's try to be in the shoes of your ideal customers. They're likely isolated, they're likely struggling, they're likely anxious, all these things. And so they likely don't have a lot of bandwidth. And so it needs to be easy. So the course is amazing. It's great. But in that situation, again, like I don't think anyone can have too much support. So I think a Kalda coach or something like that is great. Another piece of support is likely also peers. Even in your running journey or even as you're going through school, like it's so nice to have that camaraderie and go through things together because you understand each other, you have similar experiences, you have similar learnings. I think the community piece is also going to be huge. And that is something that you, I feel like, can just facilitate, but you don't necessarily have to manage all the time. You can manage it at the beginning. That's super important just to make sure it's set up for success and it's growing. But I think the community piece can also be very helpful and can complement the coach as well. And an idea I had was Kalda monthly or bi-weekly meetups with the community, where there's almost a budget. You could go to a pub, you could go to a restaurant for food and drink. The thing is just like shared experience, making sure that people are genuinely like connecting, making friendships perhaps. It's so powerful when you get into a room with people that are experiencing the same thing. You feel so seen, you feel so heard, you feel so supported. So it is important it's done correctly, but that could also be something. Just take some time to set up, but once it's up, it's so good for the brand. It's so good for the stickiness as well, because with the subscription, now there can be so many other things. It could be like, oh, if you're not subscribed, you get like one free community session a quarter or something. But if you are, it's unlimited. Same with the Kalda coach. If you're not subscribed, you have to pay out of pocket, let's say, but it's a discounted rate. But if you are subscribed, you get one every other week or whatever the math works out to be. So then there's almost more of a business case to subscribe. Then there's just so much value you're giving. I think the thing with a startup, especially in this stage, is you always want to give more than you receive. And you still, of course, want to make it sustainable for you. Again, it's like someone needs to pay for it. So like maybe the companies pay for some of it or whatever, but always give more than you receive. That's how you build a brand. Okay. That people like love and are like. I would say the other way to connect and support is, of course, on social media as well. So that piece is a little bit more obvious. And because you are a digital first kind of company with the app, that makes sense. But I would just encourage you to continue to think about those offline touch points. Like the launch event you did, I think was great. That's a great offline touch point. So I would like to visit your sales funnel.
Yes. Okay.
I know that's a bit of a switch, but it is important. So you likely know the traditional sales funnel, right? Upside down triangle, And the reason why it's an upside down triangle is because at every stage someone falls out, and that's okay because we're just for your ideal customer. Yeah. First step is obviously traffic. They need to find out about you. They need to know about you. And then the next stage is then they need to get to know you. So I always like to say it's like you building a relationship with a significant other or with a friend. Like you first find out about them and then you get to know them. You know what they're about. You know their values. You build that trust. You build that credibility. They show up for you. You show up for them. That's how you build a relationship. So that's the nurturing piece. And I'm finding that the nurturing and warming up piece is taking longer now just because there are more businesses and options out there for people. And unfortunately, I think everyone's been burned by like a business or something. So I'm sure you have had examples. I've had examples. And so that just makes people a bit more cautious, which is fine. It's just something to keep in mind. Like it's just taking longer. And then, of course, at the end, after all of that, you convert, you invite them to pay or work with you or whatever. And then that's how you make the sale. High level, that's essentially the customer's journey with your business. It's our job to make every single stage as seamless as possible, as easy as possible, so that we are bringing in the right people, we are nurturing them, and then when we ask them to pay, they're like, yes, this is a no-brainer. I understand what you're offering. I understand what I'm going to get in return. And it's just like a very seamless process. So we can go through it, but I'll just pause, see if you have any questions.
Mind blown. Like when you see traditional frameworks of things, I think it's when it's being implemented right before your eyes, applied directly into your
business. Yeah, this makes sense.
Of course, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But in a like a really refreshing way, where you're just like you get so stuck in the weeds.
So the first step is traffic or lead gen or how people find out about you. Yeah. This is obviously a very important step because if you don't have enough people at the top of the funnel, you're not going to have enough people at the bottom. So you're not going to make your sales goals. The goal with the traffic and lead gen is to have as much on autopilot as possible. And then, of course, we can then amplify with paid. We've talked about this before. It's not sustainable if that's your only way to get leads. You're going to run out of money. It's just not great. So from an organic perspective, I think there's three main things we can do. The first one is definitely optimizing your SEO and your website visits. This was actually something that I managed to do by myself, but I think I was very lucky because at the time, sustainable fashion wasn't a super big niche, but I got it so that I was like #1 ranked whenever someone searched sustainable fashion consulting. And that's how I got so many of my clients just from that. So exact same thing with you. I think that people still search for their problems very heavily on Google. So if people are like, oh, mental health, accessible, LGBTQIA, whatever, like we want to make sure Kalda's coming up. And people always talk about how important search is because a lot of the times people are literally looking for the answer then. Yeah. Whereas sometimes they're just not thinking about it. They're not ready yet. But these are people that are actively looking for something. So it's so important we set that up. And I can talk about how we can do your SEO later, but I just wanted to say that's a big opportunity. And then secondly, social media as well. Like the more content you put out, the more you're going to be discovered, the more we're going to get to the right people in front of the right eyeballs. And then the third one, which I think is a really big one for you, is going to be referrals. And this is going to be two-pronged. So I think referrals from other users, especially given that the community is so close-knit. If I know someone else that's struggling in this space, like I'm going to refer them. And it doesn't even have to be like another trans person referring another trans person or whatever. It could just be like someone that has a friend that is struggling and like they're going to refer their friend. So that's a big piece. And then the other piece, which I think might be even bigger and more helpful for you, is tapping into the therapy space. Because I'm sure as a therapist, you're doing this job because you care about people. And if you have to turn people away because you're either full and or they can't afford it, it sucks. So if you can tell therapists like, hey, refer them to Kalda, that is such a great solution for the therapist, but also for their patient. Yeah. And I think that's such a big opportunity for you. You should be establishing and making relationships with these therapists to begin with. Having that can be very powerful. And there's that trusted authority that's telling them. And the reason why I bring this up is because I used to work on La Roche-Posay, which is like a dermatologist recommended brand of skincare, but their target demographic was people that like had eczema or like rosacea, so skin problems. With that, like if a dermatologist is recommending like a skincare brand to you, there's that trusted authority. So that was one of their biggest ways to get new customers and get to the right people.
That's it. That's it. And I've hairdressers or something and they recommend a product.
Of course.
You would buy it
immediately.
seeking therapy, you're already at this
Exactly.
place of, I just need help.
Yeah. And I think it's great because these are people that are actively taking action. They're not just being stuck and doing whatever, because we all know for mental health, like you need to want it yourself first. So these are people that are actively saying, hey, I need help. I know I need help. I'm willing to go seek out resources. So this is like the perfect person for you to target. So yeah, I think that's like a huge opportunity for you. And then of course, like referrals as well. But I would say those would be like the 3 kind of organic ones. And then if you can figure out paid ads and like influencers on top of that, like I think you're golden.
Yeah.
So that's high level, the traffic piece. Shall we go on to how to nurture?
Yeah.
This is the piece that I mentioned takes longer. So especially for this community, potentially there might be the need to warm up for longer as well, because maybe there's like a history of not being understood, or like a history of people not being there for them. So I feel like trust and credibility is so important to this community. Having that in mind even more as you're going about it is so important. So like even with those community events, I'm not sure how you marketed or communicated the ending of them, but like ending something like that, I think most businesses could maybe just be like, we're not doing it. But for Kalda, I think especially for your brand, like you just need to be more thoughtful about these kind of things. Just something to keep in mind. I would love to just constantly think about what can you do digitally and IRL. I think that's very important. So digitally, on the app, you're doing this already, but you're giving the free courses, you're doing the free previews, you have the journal prompts. Like there's so much value we're giving for free already. That piece you're doing really well. We just likely need to send more traffic to it. I think that's the problem. I think you just don't have enough traffic that's not paid. Also with the paid, I would also be curious to see if we're getting the right people as well. On the app, you're doing a great job, so continue that, keep that up. Off the app is where I see a massive amount of opportunities, like what we just talked about, like the Kalda coaches or like the communities, whatever that looks like, social media content, events, that space. There's just so much opportunity there, in my opinion. So we'll park that. I'll just leave that and we can talk more about what that looks like later. And then conversion. This is the piece that I also think likely needs a bit of work. Exact same thing. I want you to think about it on the app and off the app. So the way to convert is not solely on the app. Of course, they're already on the app, so it's easier, but like we can send them emails. We can get them to sign up in real life. Like there's so many different opportunities and touch points. And we should have multiple different opportunities and touch points. I think the more ways someone can pay you, the better, right? Like the more likely you are to be paid. If you think about just a fashion brand, if you can buy on their website, great. But if you can see them in a store, even better. If you can see them at a market, that's even better. So it's like multiple touch points to reduce the barrier to buy. You just want to make it as easy as possible for customers, especially knowing that your ideal target customer is already dealing with so much stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So sales is just like simply an exchange of value. So I always like to build brands and encourage my clients to build brands where we give a lot of value first and then we ask. Give, then we ask. I think the free course and then asking makes sense. I also think giving a free lessons as a preview and then asking also makes sense. The problem is that we're not getting enough traffic to the app, and then we're also not getting enough people to open the app. So I don't think you have a sales conversion problem, you have a product usage problem. Because this makes sense in theory, but if not enough people are doing the actions we want, like opening the app, making an account, knowing that there's a course, going to the course, there's steps that people just aren't taking, either because it hasn't been optimized and or they're just not aware of it. Do you see what I mean? Because from a customer journey perspective, this makes sense logically. Because if you downloaded an app and you go into it and they're asking you for money right away, aren't you going to be pissed off? You're like, I don't even know what this app is. You haven't given me any value. Like, why would I give you money? So the way you've set it up makes sense to me, but we just need to encourage people to take those actions. Based on what I know about the business and based on what you've told me, I think from a sales funnel perspective, we have a problem at the top and we have a problem a little bit on the bottom. I think you're likely doing a really good job with nurturing, which is great. So keep that up, but we just need to improve the traffic so we're getting more people. From a conversion perspective, I think you're set up for success as well, but the behavior is just not happening for whatever reason. And we can dissect and see why that is. The nurturing is good, so that's great. Okay. And then we just need to work on the traffic. The thing about the sales funnel too is it's something that like you continuously improve. So I'm giving you like a gold star on nurturing now, but eventually maybe you're going to get so much traffic that you're overwhelmed with nurturing and then nurturing becomes a problem. Or you're good at traffic, you're good at nurturing, but you just don't have systems to convert everyone. So at every single point, you're always going to have a bottleneck or something that's broken. So you're never going to have a perfect sales funnel. But yeah, I don't want you to sit here and think like you need to achieve a gold star and everything. I think it's more so looking at your business now, looking at where the constraints are, why you're not making sales, and then adjusting accordingly. Okay, so next I want to go through marketing. And then after that, we can pause and put it together and just talk about the implementation. Think of brand, or when other people think of brand, what does that mean to you? Because a lot of people just think it's like a logo or colors or font, and it's not. It's like a bit deeper.
The closest one that really resonates is like in running, and particularly for me, Nike. I'm immediately like determination, empowered. I feel resilient. I feel resolve.
At the end of the day, you know this, like even Coke and Pepsi, right? There's a reason why you drink Coke over Pepsi potentially, because theoretically it tastes the same. I know for you it may taste different, but it's the brand. It's the same thing with running shoes. Like all of them are made equal. There's a little bit of differentiation, but you as a person have personality and values. And so we tend to pay more or maybe pay less for certain brands. I always have found it so fascinating that for certain products, like it could be very similar, but people will pay significantly more just for the brand. And that's the piece that is interesting. And a lot of it's like consumer psychology, behavior and stuff. But all this to say, when we're building the Kalda brand, there's a few things we want to keep in mind. So the first thing is that it takes time. You brought up Nike, and Nike, you've said so many different things, but they've been building that brand for decades and decades, and they have stuck by this brand principle of elite athletes, of superior performance, of pushing yourself, like just do it. There's so much strong brand association people have with Nike, but that's because they've been consistent over time. And that's really what branding is. It's being consistent over time.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, okay. That's really what it is. And that's why doing a rebrand is so important, because sometimes we'll laugh and be like, oh, companies paid so much money just to change their logo. I think it was like the PwC rebrand, like everyone was laughing at them about it. But it's because brand is built over time. So when you are changing it, people feel upset because they're like nostalgic about the old brand, or they don't know where the new brand is going. So if you hear people talking about, oh, that's off brand or whatever, that's why it's so important for a new company to constantly think about the brand and do what's best for the brand.
Okay.
Because Nike, after decades and decades of building this brand, if they started releasing a shitty product, or if they started working with athletes that are subpar, or like athletes that have a reputation for cheating the system or whatever, that's going to tarnish their brand. And something they've worked decades and decades on could just be gone like that. So that's why this is so important. And as the founder and CEO, like stewarding and protecting the brand is very important. And so it's not to say like you fucked up with the rebrand or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying now moving forward, always think about the brand, because your brand equity is something that's very important. You can charge higher if you have a premium brand. You can charge higher if you have a brand people trust and is reputable. A brand is essentially association of certain things over time. So it's really important you're specific about what you want to be associated with, but then equally important, what you don't want to be associated with. So again, for Nike, as an example, they want to be associated with elite athletes. They don't want their athletes to be caught doping or whatever. Like, it's very clear around what they're about and what they're not. And of course, Nike can't control what their athletes do, but they're probably doing so much due diligence to ensure they're so selective and so careful with who they're partnering with. And exact same thing with you, right? We want to make sure you're partnering with registered therapists that have degrees, know what they're doing, aren't taking advantage of their patients, all this stuff. If it comes out that we're partnering with people that are shady, that's not only going to reflect poorly on the therapist, but it's going to reflect poorly on your brand. So it's very important. We're very selective with what associations we want and also what associations we don't want.
What you're saying really resonates.
And that wraps up the strategy portion of the session that I did for Dan. After fleshing out his go-to-market strategy, we went tactical, creating a roadmap for him to execute and prioritizing everything so that he could do it based on his current capacity and budgets. If you'd like my help with your GTM strategy and get a personalized roadmap as well, check out selinaho.com/consulting or click the link down below and let's chat. And that's a wrap on this episode of Confessions of a Conscious CEO. I hope you got a lot out of this episode. If you did, it would mean the world if you subscribed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify and left a rating and review to help more conscious founders discover this show. It would also make my day if you shared this episode to your Instagram stories or LinkedIn and tagged me at Selena Ho or at Confessions of a Conscious CEO. Always cheering you on, and I cannot wait to see what you built from this.